Now we're recording. That's fine. Oh, you're listening to people? Yeah. That's okay. All right, well, welcome to the zoning bylaw review committee, Martha Levitt meeting. Roger, Smith. Two items. Review of the draft ADU regs. Yeah, 2 full minutes. So, the last meeting, we talked about the draft ADU regs. I had some homework to do. Added a few things, talked to town council. So a couple things that I added was we had to look at, one of the things is looking for the definition for a lot. And the good news is our regular bylaws have a definition for lot, which I left that as is because I'd rather than looking to the original bylaws that create a new definition. So that was one item. One. Three, there was a language change to say exactly one dwelling unit. Changed temporary structures to as defined. Also looked at adding a condition for providing adequate access for emergency response as deemed adequate by the Bellingham Public Safety Authority. So with that, we also look at some other stuff, which we'll get to in a minute, and how it's actually a little bit more complicated. Let me go first into the review from town council. So town council included an edited, I included an edited version of town council's review. So bear with me for a minute. And mostly with her comments, it was really just kind of changing a lot of the stuff back to the regulations, the draft ones that we looked at that we kind of were having issues with. And I explained that to Amy after that she submitted this, and she understood why we're taking the approach we are with, there's issues with the regulations, and let the attorney general state that, okay, we have an issue with you requesting oversight by public safety. So she was completely understandable with the situation we were in. But the few things that I would recommend changing to our zoning bylaws are, like, she specified protected use accessory dwelling unit because that's how it's stated in the regulations, which I think is fair. One thing she added here, which I don't agree with, is I specifically stated residential, suburban, or agricultural zoning districts because those are all residential zones. She put in multifamily dwelling and business zoning because business does include, I think, there's like a multifamily clause in it, but I still say we stick to the residential districts. That's my opinion. So I wouldn't include this. Two,
this single family homes in the business district, though.
Yeah, it's pre-existing conforming, it's fine.
And there's not an actual multi-family district. I don't think you can deny it. You're not gonna be able to deny a permit to do it if you're supposed to.
Oh, they're coming to you anyway. So, okay, so do you want me to?
Well, I don't know, I'm just saying, if the business district has a lot of houses, and if they wanna put
But not properly, like it's pre-zoning.
well, so it was residential first, and then business district was
Right.
placed, so, yeah, it's non-conforming now, it was at one time.
Well, would it be that they have to rezone back to residential?
Well, so the primary use is residential,
Right.
so,
Well, technically, principal dwelling structure, regardless of whether it conforms to zoning, it's pre-existing non-conforming. Including use requirements and dimensional requirements such as setbacks. But yeah, so I can kind of see where it might get a little bit convoluted here. You know, it might make sense to say residential, suburban, or agricultural zoning districts if consistent with the following, and then maybe include something in there that also applicable to pre-existing non-conforming principal dwellings, maybe?
Well, we can't, let me ask you this, so state law that exists now, does it allow for multifamily dwelling business? Does it allow for this zoning, this use in any zone?
Well, that's where the question came up with
Oh.
the initial definition, because the initial definition that they had
It was single family
was-
residential zone.
single family residential zones, but that included zones that you could get a special permit and a use variance for, which a use variance would then make any district a single family residence. So like if it's not allowed, you can get a use variance. You're not gonna get it, but.
So I wouldn't be more expansive than what, to be less expansive,
Yeah,
and if there's a pre-existing non-conforming in a business zone, they can do it.
I
That's
agree.
what I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, and the multifamily dwelling zone is like spot zone, for it's what, 2 lots? I don't even know what the history is with that thing. And then the business zone, you said, pre-existing non-conforming. It meets this, it says if consistent with the following, which is the principal dwelling. I would leave it as is.
Okay.
So, 2 was just changing what we changed the gross floor area definition back to what we were saying didn't make sense because that was in the original regulation. So I would still recommend sticking with what we had, which is from our original definitions, but changed a little bit.
So, again, this is excluding the area, but,
Attics.
it- attics can be livable areas, right?
Let me see.
Storage type stuff, but not, I'm picturing closer to Boston with an attic, old school building with somebody all of a sudden decides they're gonna have an attic, and then all of a sudden you got people living in there, and then all of a sudden you're above the 900.
Well, if you have a finished attic, it's no longer considered an attic, right? That's the second story now. I think that's the intent.
Yeah, so a finished,
Do you want me to
a
put,
finished attic,
so I think all I would just say is, since this is excluding, I would just put unfinished attic.
unfinished, yeah,
Right.
yeah, something that makes it easier later.
Oh, you know what, actually, so this was the definition from the original, regulations, we changed it to be more in line, so that one didn't even include attic discussion, it was covered walkways, open roof, over areas, porches and similar spaces.
So this, just so I understand it, this one sheet is pre Amy's revisions. Okay, and then any revisions here are Amy's. All right, so she changed back, struck our definition. And added this one.
Correct, because that's the one that was in the original regulations, the draft ones,
From the state.
yes, from the state.
Just-
Yeah, so I would stick with what we had. Because there was,
You're like anti,
no, there is stuff that I would recommend keeping for Amy's review. For example, the protected use stuff. The next page has a bunch of stuff that I wouldn't strike any of her comments, except one, which,
so we're gonna, for the first one, we're gonna. Reject the additions. And for this one, we're gonna reject the additions.
that's what I recommend based on our conversations, and if we need to, if the Attorney General says no, then, okay.
Okay.
Which, by that point, we're gonna have the final regulations from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. I think they're gearing up for May, someone said, right? They think, just in time for spring town meeting. Oh wait, no, it's right after. Yeah.
Would one of those people, do you think, would we find one of those people and have them come?
Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
Somebody that's on that, whoever's doing that, somebody on that committee to talk to.
It is going to be really tough to get anybody from EOHLC because of the MBTA zoning that they're reviewing and this. And even during normal circumstances, I think it'd be difficult to get hold of them. I mean, I do have a contact.
I don't wanna talk about it if it's not, completed either.
I think once it's completed, you
Yeah,
know, I think
yeah.
that it's definitely doable, but unfortunately, I probably get a lot of these calls from all different towns, I would guess. They're probably saying no to everyone, but especially to me.
But I think it's, well, floor, I mean, I think that's.
Yeah,
It doesn't include basements, but, you know, there is area in your house, so it helps people with a small ranch. You know, if someone has an 800 square foot ranch or a 900 square foot ranch, they're only putting, only allows to put 450 square feet on.
and that's the definition that you've interpreted since, how long have you been around, 10 years in Bellingham? It's the same definition, so.
So,
The one that we're including in this is
Yeah,
from.
yeah, no, so what I'm
So-
saying is, at least they have the ability to use their area in the basement. In the formula, you know?
Correct. So for two, I would recommend rejecting it, but, I should definitions, yeah, so then. This is another one that I would not recommend. So this, she was saying add the definition for transit station because the parking calculations allow you to exclude parking off street or on, yeah, off-street parking if you're within half a mile of a transit station, which we're not going to be in there for anything, so I wouldn't even bring it into these regulations.
Sure, my bus stop, oh, bus station.
Yeah. We don't have any of those in town either. Until we do, I wouldn't include it. Yeah. So I think she was just trying to be proactive, but it's just gonna complicate things. That's where this, on number 5 for development requirements, she's including this, no parking spaces are required for a protected use ADU if any portion of this lot is located within half a mile radius of a transit station. It's not applicable to us. That one I wouldn't include. Everything else though on this page I would include, so protected use ADU, not this one, this is once again bringing up the multifamily dwelling business zoning district, changing everything to protected use. Once again, continuing to change everything to protected use. This number 8, so I know this was something that we were discussing at the last meeting regarding common ownership and pre-existing covenants. So looking at our zoning bylaws, we don't have anything listed in there, and I looked at some other towns, and this one is kind of a complicated subject because it's not an easily definable item. And even Amy was questioning like, what exactly does that mean? I think it's fair enough to interpret. However, one thing that I was also thinking was, if you have an ADU, you have like a duplex, you're under common ownership, and both owners say, "Oh no, we're okay with an ADU and a common ownership. They might have rights to it." So it's complicated.
It's like a townhouse situation where you've got multiple townhouses and it's done common.
Yeah, that's where this whole regulation stemmed from. So I don't, if it's a condo association, you're not gonna have 30 people say, "Oh yeah, go ahead and put my EDU in my backyard."
Yeah, what happens when it conflicts with condo documents?
Yeah, I don't know.
So maybe if they're building construction.
I guess if you had an unfinished basement in the condo, the townhouse, that would be the ADU.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I guess does it go against the HOA covenants?
Yeah.
On
And
that,
so parking and, you know, the visibility.
yeah.
So what was her recommendations for townhouses?
She didn't have anything, she just was kind of. Didn't really understand where this was from, so.
Just to throw out an
So-
idea, why not leave it in the hands of the condo association?
Good.
We could strike number 8 altogether.
I'm not saying that's a great idea, I'm just.
Yeah, and maybe, because we're gonna have to come back to this in the fall anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe it would make sense to strike this and see what the new regulations, because I assume that this is gonna be a topic that's mentioned in the next round, and if not, we can get a more definitive answer from our town council on how exactly to write this now that we have the regulations in hand.
But, like, I remember last time we talked about like Williams Project,
Yeah,
and like suddenly. All of those people could add on to the back of their houses,
not according to these, because it's per lot, not per structure. So that's,
those per lot.
it's per lot. Yep. That's how this is defined.
So he has 3 gigantic or 1 gigantic lot.
Yep.
So only one person could,
Yeah, and I highly doubt, association would allow that.
The first go around said single family homes somewhere. In the state regulation.
Well,
Allowed in the residential, but
So
I thought it said single family somewhere.
But I don't think it can because you can allow for like a third ADU, right?
By special permit.
Right, so maybe that's why it's not single family. Because you could have a 2-family, and if you allow by special permit, you could have an additional ADU.
But it's kind of the, you know, it has to be on each, single lot. So if you
Because if you
some
do
duplexes. So
one in the
some-
basement and one
yeah.
in the back.
I think I always thought it would be restricted to a duplex because some duplexes have, they're not all common area. They're defined, so you could do it on them, but that was it. Anything beyond that, it wouldn't be considered single family or,
no, I agree. Well, and I think that's where making sure that you're only allowing one ADU per principal structure per lot is where that comes into play.
Yeah.
The pain.
yeah, it is.
one principal structure per lot, even if in a situation where there's 15 structures.
Yeah, so a total of 1 ADU is allowed by right per lot in those zoning districts, in addition to a principal dwelling located on the same. So that per lot thing, I think, is what.
So if a duplex has,
A lot.
or 2 lots, because they define, if they defined.
They're not usually defined. I mean, they're not.
Some of them are, some of them are.
No, what happens
I don't
if you're a
know.
duplex and you both wanna build an ADU?
What was that?
What if you're a duplex and you both wanna build an
But
ADU?
that's
If
what,
you're on the same lot, you can.
Right, whoever does it first can do it, or you can't do it at all.
Well, what I think would happen if both property owners said you can to one, then you could do it. Which I highly doubt.
Yeah,
I mean, you might get, what you might have is somebody who says like, hey, my in-laws wanna move in, it's going back to the family apartment thing, like. We've had that issue with that lot where it's duplex and they want to do the family apartment and work because the other owner of the duplex said absolutely not.
oh, right.
So,
And I wonder too if, because you need special homeowner insurance if you're in a duplex, like you need an umbrella policy, don't you? I wonder if that would limit,
it's common area issue.
right,
Yeah.
Last time. I'm going to a workshop on Tuesday, I think.
for this.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Jay Tellum is still doing it.
Oh, really?
And he's also talking about the merger rule. The reversal of the merger rule.
You tell them good time. Yeah,
I'm gonna ask him what the consensus is on the duplex.
tell Jay
you know?
that Rob Lucier said great timing in a very sarcastic way.
So we leave eight in there, what does that do? Versus
It's gonna
taking
be,
it out?
I mean, it's just gonna be the attorney general who's gonna ultimately say yay or nay, which, to be
Can
honest
do
with
it
you,
anyway.
but kind of, at this point, they're really tying our hands here with this stuff, so.
So after you told her what we meant on it, do you have any suggestions or ideas or just strike it?
I think she was under the impression of just striking it, but like I said, the other thing too that I mentioned was kind of the approach here that we're taking with the attorney general, so. Um. Yeah, I was pretty much just striking.
Maybe just leave it and see what they say. I mean,
Yeah.
you're already allowed to build the ADUs right now, aren't you?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, it's kind of.
So
open to
it's-
Tim's office.
You know,
Have you met anybody with any?
Not yet.
Not yet.
People probably designing,
What I.
they're probably in the no
Has-
permit.
Has he approached you with, the ADU and like a common ownership?
No,
Just like reading eight. You know, like. You wouldn't know that would, at least I did, that would. Block three townhouses, right? Does that say? Townhouses to you? Yeah, I don't know.
For me, it does, just because common ownership is referring to condos, which are usually townhouses.
But it's common ownership, like, you and I own the property together? We
No.
have common ownership?
I think the same thing, it's multiple communities.
Alright, I mean,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Do they all have and subject to pre-existing covenants? That's the, like, do they always have a covenant that goes with this?
Well, so the pre-existing covenants was related to, I think it was Don Martinez mentioned in one of the meetings that like his neighborhood had covenants about like cutting trees down and not having, like, I think the Toll Brothers neighborhood has covenants that you can't have like RVs or boats in your, the driveway.
So are you saying, if there's a covenant, then, and it says you can't expand on the unit, you can't expand either?
That was the intent of it, but
I don't think that's the town's place.
that's fair, I just added it in there because we brought covenants in previous meetings. So what we could do,
So the way I see that is, it's both gotta be and both have gotta be true there, and this and. If that was the intent, need to change, or do we get rid of the second half?
it would just be, I guess it would be,
I don't know, what you,
I'd be curious to see what the attorney general said on it. If he should strike it or not.
I would be interested too, if you're concerned about, because it's, the covenants is a thing where. So.
Yeah.
It is a civil matter, so I wouldn't mind. Striking again, but could talk about this whole condo townhouse thing. Would it make sense to say a protected ADU is not permitted in areas of common ownership, such as condo associations?
Multi-family dwelling project,
Town, duplexes. Those are all defined terms somewhere.
They are.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I agree with, I think the existing covenants is, I'm not sure that's our bylaws fight.
No, that's fine. I added it in because we brought it up.
No, we're talking.
Yeah. So we'll strike that. And then I will add more
Powerhouse
clarification.
giant.
Exactly.
usually write with a red pen?
No, my nice blue pen has actually been stolen. I don't know where it is.
You have a nice
And-
pen?
Yeah, I have, these are like, I had a pack of these gel pens. I had a black one, a blue one, and this red one, and one down to the red.
Everyone hates them.
I do,
They like to, they want to steal the blue one.
yeah, see this, that was my blue pen.
It's not a pen.
It's good, it glides, it's nice.
Next, bro.
I'm good, it's just fine. We also have another pen. The red is fine because it helps me mark this up, so. So I just put. So struck and are subject to pre-existing covenants, and just did such as condominium, townhouse, or multifamily dwelling developments. And condominium, townhouse, and multifamily dwellings are all, they are defined in our general bylaws, so. That's fair.
You have to say developments.
Doesn't have to be developments.
And leave it at multifamily
Dwellings.
dwellings.
Just condominiums, townhouses, and multifamily dwellings.
Suggest but not limited to.
Oh, Mr. Attorney. Anything else?
No, I like you.
Okay.
Right, it's at your return, it's your delivery.
Yeah, did anyone ever see the, Dean Martin roast where, Peter Falk came on the stage and roasted, Frank Sinatra?
No.
Oh my God, you should do all of that. It's so funny. It's just like, what's going on?
It was
He
great.
did an awesome job.
What's great about those roasts
Yeah.
back then is they couldn't swear.
Yeah.
All they could suggest was. It was harder to be funny, I think.
Yeah.
Than just swearing away.
Yeah, some of the stuff they said. Wow.
Different.
Yeah.
Like my own, this is a normal day.
So to go back to your pen, who do you think it's stolen?
I don't know. I don't know where it went. That blue pen was great though.
Nice.
And I think it's, I became Liz.
Is it possible you just lost it?
No, it was definitely stolen.
So I think it's a whole box of them for like $10. Scroll up to Staples.
Let's take the fun.
I thought Dylan talking about new penny.
He was selling your pen on.
Rob's. He didn't know where to pick it up when he looked at it.
You should air tag on your next one.
I should. That'd be really hard to like.
Scott,
I'm gonna not take it to my hand.
Or just put it around your neck, like a necklace.
You're not.
Little pull chain.
I mean. You know, thank you all. We're good for you. It's gonna be, you know.
he's a village.
It does. Where are we now? This was added, which I think this came straight from the language from the page, where the lot or principal dwelling is non-conforming prior to the issuance of a building permit. General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 240-30 of this bylaw shall apply, and a finding by the zoning board of appeals acting on a majority vote that the protected use ADU will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing nonconformity to the neighborhood should be required, but shall not be subject to a special permit. That's,
So does that mean the zoning board can shoot something down because it's more non-conforming than the non-conforming primary use?
it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because you can't, if it's not a special permit. So wait,
What's 240-30? What's that in reference to?
that is,
Section, was that
Setbacks,
intensity use?
density, yeah, intensity use.
Yeah.
is that what it is? I have it somewhere, but
So the principle is non-conforming
Prior to.
prior to the issuance of the building. What does that mean?
So, that means to me, it's a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
so I think this is actually what we were discussing previously about if you move a non-conforming structure and you have an ADU. So for example, you have a building that's 5 feet away from the property line, setback is 10. You build the ADU, you got a second story. And now the question becomes, is the ADU becoming more detrimental
Not more non-conforming.
or more non-conforming? It's saying that you could go to the ZBA and acting on a majority vote.
Get that permission, but not, it's not requiring a special.
Correct.
Condition. So it's not a variance,
And so,
it's just permission,
Correct. So you can deny it still.
that's a leave it.
Yeah.
So if the lot is pre-existing non-conforming and the proposed
The
accessory,
structure is existing on.
Let's say too close to the lot line.
yeah, it was built, whatever, and
oh,
And
okay,
if you wanted to build an ADU,
say it's a single story.
yeah,
okay.
you wanted to build an ADU, since there's a pre-existing non-conforming in your ADU and make it worse. You have to go to the zoning board to get that permission, but the zoning board can't condition it through a special permit.
And so as long as I made it no more non-conforming than it already is.
Well, it's up to this, whatever this says, will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conformity to the neighborhood. So it's a way to say no, it's pre-existing. The 240-30 is,
I'll figure that out right now.
Use ADU will not be substantially more detrimental than existing non-conformity to the neighborhood. Shall be required,
this is horribly drafted.
yes. But shall not be subject.
So I guess if you're trying to build a Franken ADU, there's an opportunity to
A
stop
Franken
it.
ADU?
Well, if your principal dwelling is non-conforming
Yeah.
Right,
or lot,
right.
Well, I think I like it.
but I'm reading this as
40-30
where the lot
Is
is,
non-conforming uses.
Yeah, and structures.
this says where the lot is non-conforming. So my lot's non-conforming,
Where the lot or principal dwelling is not important. Let's say it's a shape thing.
okay? So my lot is non-conforming.
Right.
And so if I wanted to put up any accessory dwelling unit,
You gotta-
Well, if it,
If it's substantially more detrimental, so if you had like a,
To who's,
so if you add if your house is non-conforming now,
Yes.
I think say you're putting an addition on it, and you can meet the sideline setbacks, without,
yeah, that's
Without
not
any
making
permission,
it more
then
non.
that's not making it more non-conforming. If you're gonna put a second story on the whole house, the impact of that. If it's too close to the lot line, you're increasing the non-conformity, basically. I mean,
But if they just did something entirely in there,
oh, yeah,
nobody would.
right.
No,
I don't think that. Yeah, I
it
mean,
probably has meant to be the external
yeah,
detached.
you're still impacting,
So is this a complete graph from,
This one,
yeah,
I believe so. That was my understanding.
because
And
any,
just leave it in.
I would.
what is prior to the issuance of building permit?
So it probably means the lot was pre-existing non-conforming. And then there was was a building permit issued on it. And it
No,
just,
I think, aren't they coming with you to with plans? And then you look at it and you're like, ooh, this seems wonky. I'm not gonna issue a building permit. You have to go to zoning.
So
is that what that means, or does it mean that?
That was my
That's
interpretation.
right, actually, it could be, yeah.
because otherwise you could say prior to the issuance of the building permit,
I'm thinking,
where the lot or principal dwelling is non-conforming, blah, blah, blah. But this
Yeah.
is said differently. So
Oh.
I thought it was like,
the structure was already there.
it was it's non-conforming prior to an issuance of the building. What does that mean?
Well, that means that if I, for instance, if I have a lot that's less than 2 acres in agricultural, that's non-conforming already.
So
What
if,
is the prior to the business?
so I feel like the intent was before you, if you come to us and you wanna build an ADU, they're talking about that building permit related to the ADU, not any building permit. Or the original building.
So
permit.
yeah,
That's my interpretation.
so if we swung the prior to the first. To the first word of the sentence, prior to the issuance of the building permit. Where the lot of the principal dwelling is non-conforming. Blah, blah, blah shall apply in fronting by the, right, that should be the.
Yeah, that's what I think they're trying to do.
So I would still need to come for the zoning board, even though I have plenty of acreage to do this.
Yeah.
Because my lot is non-conforming.
Want to exclude you specifically?
No, I'm just thinking, what I'm thinking is,
Except for.
I'm thinking all the lots that were in existence prior to zoning. That may wanna have accessory dwelling units put up on them. Means we exclude all of those that are gonna have to become before the zoning board.
I mean,
Yeah, but they're not subject to, they're not subject to, frontage. Not, you're not,
yeah, it
not
doesn't
subject to
say
frontage, no.
how, what you make the decision on, but.
so but that frontage kind of dictates that too.
Well, yeah, so frontage, I don't have frontage, so the frontage I have makes my lot. Maybe well, it's typical of like,
House, yeah.
it's, I mean, I 1.6 acres and 70 feet of frontage. Right, I'm supposed to have 200 feet of frontage and 2 acres. You know, it's, and so I can imagine that in other areas where you have tighter housing, that you're gonna have this,
Yeah.
that could be residential, that you're gonna have this as well. That houses are pre-existing non-conforming all over the place.
Yeah, you can put
And
it
if,
anyways.
and if all of those wanna do accessory dwelling units, and need to get the permission of the ZBA, then
But what would the criteria be that we would be
The
evaluating?
non-conformity, you mean?
So this is, and that question is the issue at hand here where, okay, like this is good, but the state has not given any guidance on how to act. I mean, this is the same situation that Tim's dealing with right now, where this is enacted and we have no regulations to go
Right.
off.
Right.
So,
And
I mean, what would the zoning board say? Oh, this looks like it would be
Yeah.
too detrimental, no?
It says it will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conformance. It gives the DBA some latitude.
Yeah,
I think it has to be because. These non-conforming lots will just be made more non-conforming.
yeah, we wanna make sure that people aren't wanting things where they.
Yeah, so if
Shouldn't be.
they come to me, in my opinion, I'm regulating the ceilings of rear and front, because it's a given, you can do it. So, every lot is regulated by per, area and frontage. So area and frontage determines a lot, really. So,
why would you exclude frontage?
because you can do it no matter what, it's a given. You don't have to take frontage into account. Let's say if you have 100 feet of frontage and it's required 200 feet, they're given permission to put this ADU in no matter what. Frontage wise.
I'm not thinking of fight, I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand. Why is that a conforming lot and the acreage is not a conforming lot?
so it's not, I think what you're trying to say, Tim, so if the frontage would make it a non-conforming lot, just like acreage. So like you said, if you have 70 feet of frontage, it's non-conforming.
Yeah.
However, there's no way these regulations can make frontage more non-conforming. Because in order to make a lot more non-conforming frontage, you'd have to subdivide it. You need to make another lot to take away the frontage. This isn't, there's no exercise to subdivide this because it's all gonna be on the same lot. So really,
Okay,
the non-conformity will come into the setbacks from the property line. And
okay, so we're talking about making it more non-conforming.
Right.
Okay, so you're not gonna make the lot size any smaller. What you might go closer to the side, the side yard setback, which would be
Yeah. then
more
I-
non-conforming.
And I would send it to ZBA then.
Yeah, and I think where they,
Okay.
in my opinion, the whole lot conversation in this just makes it complicated. They
Yeah.
should just keep it the principal dwelling.
Yeah.
I think their intent is in some communities, they might have like a lot coverage requirement,
Okay,
like that might come into play. We don't have that.
Yeah, some communities do.
So that's where like the non-conforming lot, because it's much smaller than, you know, if you're required 2 acres.
Yeah, so that would be an option,
What was that?
it's 100%.
Exactly. What I'm saying is that the reason why they probably just put lot language in here is that in some communities, you have like a maximum lot coverage
Yeah.
requirement in like a residential zone. A lot of times it's like 40% of the lot can be your maximum impervious coverage. And we don't have that issue here, but like I think in Medway they have it. So if you have like this ADU, for example, and you're over the 40%, and there's a community that requires a 40% max, that's where you can go to the ZBA and say, like, I've actually run into this issue in those communities where they'll say, all right, it's not more detrimental because I'm gonna put the roof drains in these like underground chambers, meters, and you know, there you go, you're not gonna have any more like runoff, because that's the whole point of lot coverage, is to make sure you don't have runoff going into other people's yards. I digress, that's like not something we have to deal with, but I think that's why they put non-conforming lots and structures. We're more with the non-conforming dwellings. Then it'll be up to your interpretation, Tim, I think, to say if it's more non-conforming or not.
Oh,
If
yeah,
there's even a question, send it to ZBA.
Yeah. exactly.
ZBA won't have family in-law apartments to do, so we're just gonna be sitting there.
Okay, so,
Our bread and butter. It was the
Yeah.
ZBA's bread and butter.
so. That's what you see, money.
Family and living.
Heights. You talking about, if you had like a single family house, you wouldn't wanna have an ADU that was higher than the house or something.
That would be another variant, that would be another ZBA. If
Yeah,
someone came in with a design and they were putting it on top and they couldn't meet the 30, I think it's 35 feet or something.
yeah, they think what you're saying, there was a question about the,
If you had a one floor house.
yeah.
So we want to do two-story, but still could do the 900.
And so according to the regs right now, you could do that, and I think the question was there a way to condition it, which I kept it out because based on the language that the state has now is basically stating that you can't condition anything more than a single family house. So if we stick to the bulk density requirements in the, or the intensity requirements, I should say, in the zone, that's pretty much what we can hang our hat on. I agree that that would be pretty odd if there was a 2-story ADU and a 1-story principal dwelling, but
900 square feet.
well, if it's 1 story as well, don't forget that it can only be 900 square feet max, or half of the lot, or half of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling. So like if you had a small ranch, you know, something, I mean, if you have like the acres or Weathersfield, I mean, I don't,
Can't only have a slab, if you have a slab ranch.
yeah, they're not really,
You kind of,
you're not gonna really have much options, you can do this anyway, but if you did do that, you sure as heck wouldn't be able to get much with 2 stories. You might be able to do like a loft, like a small. Very hot. You're not wrong, there's creative people out there. Hey, I'm considering. You know.
And being you considered.
So those were the changes that Amy made, and they, like I mentioned, I think a lot of these we can include in a studies, we've already, I like the ideas, the recommendations for some of the other language. The other thing that I wanted to look at, I discussed with Chief Miller today, and he was happy with number 10, the ADU can provide after absence for emergency response is deemed adequate by the Bellingham public safety officials. He was happy with that. I don't know if the attorney general will be, but we'll find out. I think so. And he actually something else he recommended, and I just added it to this draft, but and be in compliance with all applicable state and local fire codes.
Great.
So that was all we had to add. There was the other comment that you mentioned, Brian, about the max occupants. I am struggling to find anything because I even looked at Boston's regulations to see if there's anything defined in there. I didn't see anything.
Really?
Yeah. I was looking at their zoning regs, it might be in their health regulations, but
Oh, maybe.
even then,
I know for sure that the way they dealt with all these people overcrowding in apartment is the way they look at it.
gotcha. I don't know if maybe when we see the new regulations in May, they might have something in there, but I have a feeling probably not. But I struggled to find anything, so I didn't include anything in this draft.
I think it's, if the accessory dwelling unit is going to be used as a rental unit, then it makes complete sense to have the number of occupants are limited to something. But if it's a family thing, right, 'cause
Yeah. No, I get that.
Who cares about family? Who cares about family?
I might imagine that it would be attached to the house versus some separate thing.
Right.
But that's the issue too, is that they're not making any distinction between rental or like owner occupied, example, the ADU occupied.
You didn't get any input from Jesse, did you?
Vital?
Yeah.
No.
Hmm.
They're not.
That's another issue that's gonna be.
So the only thing,
Is sewer connections and, you know.
the only regulation about single family homes, whenever people have to look, is the number of bedrooms per septic system.
That's just the number of bedrooms, because the number of people means you could have 3 people in a bedroom.
Could you have 40 people in a house?
Well, I don't know any section of the code that references, you know,
There's a septic, could
Yeah.
certainly have.
occupant load.
When,
You know what? Something. Good question. It's been one of those things where people say, oh, there's so many people in that house. Well, okay, is it a boarding house?
Well,
Are there locks on all the doors, you know?
I'm looking
If
at
you wanna
that.
invite me in, I'll come in.
As a guest, yeah.
Yeah, I just can't go, but if I was invited in, it's me from the boarding houses. Because usually there's one disgruntled renter. Always.
This is interesting. So this is the definition for boarding or rooming. A building other than a hotel or motel where rooms without kitchens are rented to 3 or more persons by the week or longer, and meals may be regularly served to roomers by pre-arrangement for compensation.
That's a very antiquated
That
definition.
is definitely antiquated.
Was the 1920s?
May or may not be working in the realm.
Yeah. Okay,
That is,
Pre-arrangement.
for
Yeah, it's
compensation.
like that's.
Did you write that one, Tim? I just wonder.
Why don't you put that on the list? Something else.
I think that's a good idea. So. There are items in here that are gonna have to be looked at once the regulations are finalized.
So we're not looking to do this at spring town meeting.
I would recommend sending this to the spring town meeting warrant and
Great.
seeing what the attorney general says. And I think we remove it because the more we talk about it, which is excellent because it has brought up a lot of questions and concerns as we move towards getting these regulations. So we're not done per se, but I do recommend that I can make the edits based on tonight's meeting. And I would recommend tonight moving this to the planning board to, or recommending to the planning board first here town meeting. So they can make the motion to send it to the select board to include on the town warrant. That's what I would recommend,
Great,
as amended.
so moved.
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
All those opposed?
Excellent job, everybody. We'll be talking more this is on, so, very good. So that's done. And then, I don't know if that's now clear with the,
Minutes, I wasn't here on the 18th.
didn't say that you were.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Chance to read the notes.
These regulations are just the draft that we talked about last time.
This is the language in the same language in the file.
The February 18th one, no, this one is the first draft. So this was the one that was discussed in the February 18th meeting. It's very similar, obviously there'll be some changes. And if you want, if what you're saying is you want it on the record, we can include the final draft in the next minutes to just state that this is the draft that was discussed. That is how you're stating.
No, I wouldn't want somebody to come back and see meeting notes and say it's right there. It isn't necessarily what they voted on, but that's the intent.
Oh, they'll be voting on, whatever's on the warrant anyway. They can look at the minutes.
Does they draft regulation?
Yeah,
It says, noted below is a copy of the draft regulations.
Anyone have anything else to say, Rand? Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to accept the minutes amended as such to remove Liz as members present.
Second.
2 seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
all right. Well, I guess the next steps, what I would recommend is we meet after the new regulations. Finalized, unless you guys would like to start working soon on something else, which we can do. It's up to you. But if you want, I can always send out an email to the members to see, because I know not everybody's here, when everybody is available. If we want to take a little break, a little breather, I know this has, there's been a lot of work here, so,
I would suggest, speaking personally, that, the summer is usually a more difficult time to get everyone together. So, I mean, if we want to make the best use of, say, April,
yeah,
that'd be, I don't have a problem getting together in April.
yeah, maybe we can meet in April and May and then maybe take, the summer off. I know like even with the planning board, we always meet once and sometime. Get it to similar hours.
So we're just gonna recommend that we meet. Zero should be.
Especially on this.
So I would, you still think, drive-through regulations, kind of done, low hanging fruit,
Yeah, I think
we
we
don't
should.
have one.
Yeah, I think we should revisit that sooner rather than later. I know the intent was to get that on the Springtown meeting, but we didn't really have a chance to discuss it, so. I would rather do that, because I feel like the conversation has been really good, this is a really good group, so. I think we can even draft it to be a little bit better. I'll be honest, when I drafted those regulations, I think they're really good as they stand, but. I think when I drafted those back in 2021, it was based on. I was working on a drive-through project, and I was, this is the best way to do the drive-through in this project. So I'm going to write language to basically make the project follow the same model. There might be more stuff we can add, so.
I think that's a good,
Okay.
an easy one.
That is an easy
And then
one.
boarding or rooming house stuff, that should.
I like that, it's okay.
April 15th.
Works with me, I'm here anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, 27th.
the 15th works better because the 22nd is April break.
April 15th is what we're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. That works with me.
Tax day.
Right,
Same time.
that'll do 6:30.
Alex 33.
So you can be fashionably late for
That was for Phil.
Yeah.
Phil easily.
I didn't think you were late, we're all just here.
Yeah,
Thank you for your kindness.
Alright, so I think we should spend a little bit of time about Rob's pen. And his belief that someone stole.
I think we should
It
trace
was-
his steps, his last
Yeah.
100 steps.
it was stolen.
Let's go search his office. Well, it's probably on the floor in the back hallway. In the office.
Fly closet?
You're gonna have to read
An apology letter.
where he whips around the corner to run upstairs.
I didn't claim that anyone in this building stole big head.
Oh, yeah, would have been an applicant.
You know what, I bet it was one of those seniors that volunteers their time.
It very well could have been. Yeah, we're done.
We're gonna,